So we know each other because our little boys went to school with each other. And that was a long time ago, seems a world ago, since we're recording this right now during 2020 and it's summertime. And we've been in the 6th month of the quarantine at this point. And so it's been a lot of transitions for a lot of people. And thank goodness we have people like Tonya who's able to help us process all that so we don't go too crazy. Now, we met and our children were attending a multi-language preschool. And I wanted to ask you, why was it important for you to have a son or your children to speak multiple languages? What was it important for you and your husband to Stan to have Ethan speak more than just English?
Yes, we get that question quite a bit because we are not native speakers, and the preschool that our 2 boys attended together, they were both learning Spanish and Mandarin. And, I think my husband and I probably came at it from 2 different perspectives, but sort of landed in the same place. For my husband's a researcher, and so he's very evidence-based. And so I think for him, it was knowing the literature and information about the cognitive and social benefits of being multilingual, particularly the cognitive and academic benefits of being multilingual. And I think for me, it was definitely influenced more just by kind of a social orientation around sort of contributing to a global citizen of the world. My husband and I both really enjoy travel, and in particular international travel. And I think we wanted to equip our son with skills and tools and a passion for that as well, and saw language as a key that kind of opened up the world to him. So that was.
Do you or Stan, your husband, speak other languages or have had experience with not being able to communicate with somebody when you were traveling, that you thought, okay, this is so frustrating, I want to give my kid more?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can speak to both of those. Yeah, so I have some Spanish language experience, and as an adult I've traveled and participated in a couple of different Spanish immersion experiences abroad to try to improve my Spanish speaking skills. And was about 15 years ago, was probably a little bit more fluent than I am now, because I didn't continue to practice and use it as much as I should have to maintain it. So I think that was one part of it. It's sort of having experience as an adult learner, trying to learn the language and realizing how difficult it was, definitely informed my decisions. My husband doesn't. We lived in Paris for about 6 months, and during that time, he attempted to learn French and gave it up after about 4 weeks. So it's very hard. So to your question, sort of a 2-part answer is, so yes. So like I probably could still get by a little bit if I needed to in Spanish. My receptive language skills are definitely much more well developed than my expressive, so I can understand a lot more than I can probably speak. So I probably could get by. However, I had an experience several years ago, prior to having my son, of traveling abroad. And I was in Morocco. Was it Morocco? I think. I was traveling, and the language was Arabic. And I think that was the most humbling experience I've ever had in my life, because I couldn't like even look at the written language to try to decipher.
You couldn't even guess, right? You couldn't even
or anything. And so, and I couldn't understand it. And actually, it was sort of French and Arabic that was so good. So I had a French dictionary. It's like, okay, I know enough Spanish that might look like enough like French that I could sort of try to get by. But it was, I don't know if frustrating is the word. It was humbling, I think, more than anything. I just felt very humbled. And I remember walking into a cafe and like literally motioning with my hands, like, I want food. And being very acutely aware when I returned to the States of the experiences of individuals whose English was not their first language. and the way that, you know, Americans can interact with people where English is not their first language. And I think that definitely left a mark on me, that probably also contributed to my ideas of having a multilingual child.
What what do you get as a, for me, I understand, like, I think Spanish, and being in Los Angeles, Spanish is very natural, and being in America, actually, Spanish is a very natural second language for students to learn. And it's unfortunate that, like, in the public school system, most of the time you're not required to take a second language until you're in high school. So you decided to take the initiative and start Ethan very early and learn this, have a second and third language, actually. But what
Mm-hmm.
would you say is the most common question you get as a non-heritage speaker of either both Spanish or Chinese Mandarin?
As Ethan's parent,
As
you
Ethan's
mean?
parents, like, what is the most common question that you get when somebody says, maybe it's like, why Chinese, maybe?
Why
Why
that
Spanish?
is that is exactly the question. Chinese, I think less. I'm sorry, Spanish less so, and perhaps that's because we are in Los Angeles, and you know, there's a perceived higher percentage of native Spanish speakers, and so I think less so that, but definitely the most common question that we get is why? Why are you teaching your child Chinese?
And what did
Um,
you say to that?
I speak to the, you know, the knowing the cognitive and social benefits of being multilingual and wanting our son to be a global citizen of the world. And again, that still doesn't answer specifically, but why Chinese? Why Mandarin? So then I just go back to statistics and data. And, you know, when we were considering languages, and my husband, who is very data driven, looked to see what are the, you know, languages spoken by the most number of people in the world. And, you know, Mandarin was at the top. Mandarin, Spanish, and English are at the top of that list. So,
And tell me about the research study that you shared with me, with toddlers counting from 0 to 10 and then 10 to 11 and above 20. Do you remember that, the study about
absolutely.
that? Can you kind of summarize for the readers, I mean the watchers, viewers, about that study?
Absolutely. And being that I am not the researcher, it's a study that my husband came across. I don't have the exact name or citation for you, but essentially
I'll put it on the thing.
thank you. It's a study that looked at math learning in comparing students from China and American students, and essentially looked at in the early childhood learning of math and numbers and counting, and that from about birth to about age 3, the American and Chinese students or children are about the same, but at around age 3, there's a huge gap where the Chinese students just sort of take off in their learning. And part of that was attributed to the what I call the base 10, and I think that's appropriate. I'm not a mathematician. Approach that's used in teaching numbers and math and counting strategies in the Chinese language, and that even because when you know, for kids who are in America, they're learning their numbers. When you get after 10, it becomes 11, 12, 13, 14. So you actually have to learn a sort of a different sort of set of numbers as opposed to, and I don't think it's only in Chinese language, but I think in other Asian languages as well. It's like it after you learn 0 through 10, then what we would call 11 is 10, 1 and 10, 2 and 10, 3. And so there's a different sort of pattern in learning of counting that happens in that switch after kids learn those first sort of 10 numbers. That what's most fascinating about the study is that the English or the American kids never catch up. So even after they have acquired and learned, you know, how to say 11 through 20 and then 21 through 30, that gap, they actually never make up through the rest of their academic career. So that was also a selling point for learning Chinese, I think, to my husband especially.
I really love that, and I think that, you know, you kind of take that for granted. So I feel like you studied French, you said, right? Or Spanish?
I studied Spanish, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how do you say, like, 90 in Spanish?
That, yes, it is not 10-9 or 9-10.
That's right. That's right. So it's like 420s, isn't it? 420s.
Yeah,
420s is so you'd have to know multiplication
you'd have to know, right? Exactly,
to know how
exactly.
to count
Yeah,
up to 90, and then like in French to say 91 is 420s plus 11.
yeah, yeah. So
So that's
it's
the hard. You're doing like arithmetic and you're counting numbers, right?
exactly, exactly.
And then for my little one, you probably have, it's been a while since Ethan's counted. He's probably not had any problems with his numbers, but 12 and 20 were very confusing
Mm-hmm.
for my little one and both of them actually, for both my kids. So I thought that that was really compelling evidence, especially when you saw the numbers, how they tracked over a period of time during these kids' development.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Different question. Okay. How do you support Ethan's language being non-native, being unable to speak Chinese or Spanish? How do you support his learning?
That's probably the second most question that we get after why. And so we do our best to, well, we're actually pretty good at using and incorporating a lot of cartoons, TV shows that are in Spanish or Mandarin. In fact, those of us who know us know that for the most part, English language cartoons are actually not even allowed in our home. That's sort of a treat for Ethan. If he's watching
This poor
anything, it
kid.
has to be, yeah. And it's fairly easy to do on Netflix. And he now that he's gotten older, he knows how to go in and change the language settings. So we have to be really careful. When he has his headphones on, we're like, wait, what are you listening to? And it's usually in English. So and we're fortunate that there are the access to those resources are there. We've also supplemented with books, so dual language books and apps. Duolingo is one app we've been using over the summer, and so just for 15-20 minutes a day, we make sure that he is on the app. That particular one seems to be effective because it's very like engaging and fun, and he earns points, and it feels more like the game, and he really likes it. So, but yeah, I'm using a lot of apps, television shows, cartoons, books, music, and I think just sort of exposure to the culture in general, and being blessed with friends who also are who are native speakers who can engage with Ethan in the language is also just an added plus for us as well.
What would you say is the you said that it was relatively easy because we have access to the internet and all these apps and Netflix, but would you say the most challenging part of not being able to speak Spanish or Mandarin?
Now that he is in school and the sort of more formal part of the learning is in place, the most challenging part is not being able to help him with his homework. And that became evident as early as first grade when he came home with a worksheet that was written in Chinese and used the Mandarin characters. And I was at a loss. And so I tried to struggle with the Google Translate and had my iPhone over the document, but then I realized, like, wait, if I shift it a little bit far to the left, the translation changes. So I didn't know, I had to capture the right characters to get the right translation. So it was very telling. I'll tell a quick little anecdote because the school that he attends did a very nice job of assigning sort of a homework buddy to non-native speakers so that parents had a native speaking parent that we could reach out to just for the situation. And my son was aware of that. And after struggling, it really was like the first or second week of first grade, he just said, Mommy, I think you need to call somebody else's parent. So yeah.
He called you out.
Called me out. He totally called me out. But so that's been the most difficult part, is just, my own limitation of being able to really know his homework and help him with his homework. But being fortunate enough to have a supportive community to be able to literally take a snapshot of it and post it on Facebook or send it by text to someone and say, what does this mean and what are they supposed to be doing?
I would say, if I can kind of reflect a little bit on what you're experiencing, my parents came over from southern China. They didn't speak English. I kind of had like very similar experiences what Ethan is kind of having, and I didn't have the parent support of helping us with homework because they were too busy doing their job. I feel like maybe this is also a kind of a way that he can learn a little bit of figuring out himself and problem solving, and I think that that has a lot of value in itself. And saying, I could figure this out with my mom's help. I don't need that much help, and that's good and bad. It's a little bittersweet to know that they maybe don't need you as much anymore, but at the same time they are learning to stand on their own 2 feet.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that is sort of another added unforeseen benefit, that especially with the Mandarin homework, that he's able to sort of try to piece it together and figure it out. And I can see him putting forth effort, may not be the most fair way to say it, but being willing to kind of persevere more with the Mandarin, because with the English, he can turn to me and say, what does this mean? Or how do you spell this? But I can't do that with the Mandarin.
But at least he has a little bit of a way to have you help him with his homework. And now it seems like, especially these days, it seems like perseverance and grit, those are the key secret sauce to raising a successful kid.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.